What does it take to make workshops work? And how can we facilitate collaboration that sticks and leads to results? My name is Miriam Hatness, and with the Workshops Work podcast, I'm on the mission to find the magic ingredients that make workshops work. Today with me on the show is Kramer, and we speak about photography and what it can teach us about facilitation. So stay tuned. And by the way, if you don't have pen and paper at hand to take your own notes, scroll down to the show notes to download my free one-page summary. And now, lean back because you will be inspired. Hello, Elsa.
Hello, Miriam. Good morning.
Good morning. I've been looking forward to this conversation since our exploration call.
Oh, so good. Me too. And I was thinking this morning, I was like, why am I specifically so looking forward to this? Because I was like, oh, this can be so good. And I think because we're going to take the time to do some deep thinking and exploration. And I don't take out enough time to do that. So this is actually really a gift.
It's such a good point. Yeah. And I think it has changed something in me when I gave myself and my guest permission to record longer than half an hour to 45 minutes, which was the plan in the beginning. And then I realized we need the first 15 minutes to just warm up. Then the first half hour is to find the topic, and then we go deep, and then it's almost over.
Yeah, exactly. It will fly by.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I always kick it off with the same question. Some stuff is just boring, but the answers are already exciting. Always exciting. When did you start calling yourself a facilitator? And actually, do you?
I was going to say, never.
When will you start calling yourself a facilitator?
So it's so interesting. When I started training people and when I started organizing meetings, I didn't even know what to call myself, right? And I think in the meantime, I'm certified in so many things I can't even remember anymore, but I'm also like a certified moderator. So for a while, I was like a moderator for panels and stuff at events. Some people called me an entertainer because I was so fun, right?
But compliment.
I've never had a title. Nothing has ever stuck because I do so many different things. I just, basically what I always say is I make people look at the world with fresh eyes. That's what I do. Yeah.
And then whatever label you're wearing to help them do that and recognize that is the right one. What is it about the certifications?
Do you mean why I get them? Or, I'm just insatiable. I love learning new things and gathering new tools and then using whatever feels fit, right? So it's not so much about having a certification. It's just dipping into new modes of working with people, new processes, and then deciding, okay, does this feel good? Do I want to put this into my own personal toolbox? And then it goes in and I'm enriched.
Beautiful. And I might be projecting what I hear. And that's the way how I work. And I don't have many certifications. I read and get stuff, but then I mix and match it. So it's like when I read, I love reading cookbooks. I never cook according to a recipe.
Yeah. And listen, I don't know if you know MasterChef Australia. I used to be addicted to MasterChef Australia way back when. And actually, it inspired me to try certain formats in my photography workshops. So there we go.
Tell us more about that. So how did you use that for photography workshops?
So, listen, I love using constraint, of course, right? Which is such a beautiful thing, especially if you're trying to help people to be more creative. And there was this one episode of MasterChef Australia where usually they get the most beautiful ingredients and they make the most like complicated desserts. And, you know, everything is like this massive idea construct, you know, with all that we need to have a crunch and we need to have sour and sweet and all the things, and it needs to be a journey. And then one episode, the people, like the contestants, when the episode starts, they get to go to like, I don't know, the resource room where all the food is. And usually it's like beautiful ingredients. And they walked in and it was just canned food.
Wow.
And they had to create like a 5-star meal with like canned food and like dried beans. And I was like, oh yes, this is good. So what is the equivalent, right, in my photography workshops? How can I give them even less to work with? How can I make it even more bare bones so they're not like, oh my God, I'm so inspired. There's so many things I can do. Wow. They'll be like, oh no, is this what I have to work with? That sucks. Right. That's brutal.
It is. And on the other hand, it almost feels like I can imagine that can also trigger the opposite sensation, like relief. Because if it sucks at the end, it wasn't my fault.
Exactly.
I
It
did
was just
the best I could with what I had.
Spam, right? Or canned tuna. Yeah, so there's a massive freedom in there. And to me, the whole idea was tremendously exciting. I was like, first of all, I can't wait to see what these people are going to make, right? With canned tuna and split peas, and really creating room for creativity through that beautiful constraint is so fun.
Yeah.
So fun.
And then I wonder, where's the line where, so how much can we reduce? How many constraints can we add?
I have a story about this. Okay, so my first workshop was a bit of a disaster.
Tell us more about it.
Because I'm a bit of a maniac, right? When it comes to like learning new things, I just get into hyper focus and I can keep going for hours on like trying lots of different things, but with a lot of constraints. So I decided to teach photographic composition through giving people an A4 sheet and I think 2 or 3 Lego blocks. And I told them like to, vary the positioning of the Lego blocks on the A4 sheet and take pictures and learn composition that way. And that's a bit too much, right? Well, I just saw them like sort of look at the sheet and look at me again, like, is this real? And they'd start, and then I saw they really got stuck because first of all, there's maybe too much constraint, but also not enough specific instructions, right? And you can't just say to people, do this one thing for, I think I told them to do it for 20 minutes as well. I had no idea. Yeah. So I learned quickly.
Yeah, I love that. Is the importance of instructions.
Yes.
How many constraints are healthy and when does it become too much? And I think what are the healthy constraints given the level of expertise of the participants?
Exactly.
Because I think if they're professional photographers and maybe artists,
they would have been super excited.
Exactly, because then you can look at the shades and you can see how you can maybe work with the paper and give the paper different shapes.
Totally. And I think so the lesson here is also context, right? And knowing your audience and really gearing it towards their level of learning.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would like to rewind a little bit.
Sure.
Because you now spoke of your photography workshops, teaching photography. I know from our previous conversation that the photography workshops at some point moved to iPhone photography.
Yes.
So yet another restriction.
100%.
But actually you're coming out of science.
Am I coming out of in a way?
Academia.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you mean my background is I am a philosopher. I'm a philosopher. Yeah.
Philosophy.
I am a philosopher.
Different form of science. But
yes. I'm a philosopher. I also studied maths for a couple of years. So
that's right.
Yes. So that is my background.
So what have you learned from philosophy and math about working with groups and training them?
Philosophy, of course, like total curiosity and openness and being so happy in the not knowing, right? I think that is the superpower. If there's one thing you take away from a philosophy degree, other than lots of difficult words and the German philosophers, you take away the beauty of sitting in the not knowing and always being curious. What is this thing? How does language work? Can I know other humans? Right? What is connection? So many questions. And then being in the exploration of that. So fun. So that's philosophy.
And what I find puzzling before we move on to mathematics is the concept of sitting in the not knowing and the role of being a trainer, where all eyes are on you because people expect you to know.
Yeah.
How do you combine that?
I think this is also where maybe the math and the structure comes in. So you do have structure, right? It's not like, oh, I don't know. What do you think? It's not a completely open not knowing, but I think we all are so rushed towards certainty, towards something to hold on to be safe. And because of that, it's very hard for us to grow. Right. So as a facilitator, we need to be able to open up that space and say, hey, I am not going to assume anything about you. I'm not going to assume anything about the way you learn. I mean, I have ideas, I have ways of interacting, I have tools, I have structures, but I am going to see you as this massive potential. And let's play. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. Beautiful. And how did you get into that space of training?
For me, like, I am completely intuitive. So it's so fascinating to me. Always, like, I'll figure something out or I'll invent a new way of training. And then maybe a year or two later, I'll find out that it is a thing. And the reason, actually, this is quite intentional, because I also went to music school at some stage. I studied at the conservatory in Amsterdam, and I had a complete breakdown after 2 years, and it killed my love of music. I was super perfectionistic, and so were my teachers. And that was so painful that when I discovered photography later on, I was like, I am not going to take any course in this. I am not going to go to photography school. This is mine. This is my treasure, right? And I'm totally going to go in a silo, not even look at famous photographers, but just completely develop my own style, my own unique way of thinking about it. And I think the same thing then happened with the facilitating, the training.
I love that. I love that because it actually requires you to walk the talk. Yeah. Because in facilitative training, we do expect our participants to trust their own truth. Yeah. To find it within them.
Yep.
To use it.
Yeah. And to not rely on some crazy external authority, which again is this fake safety anyway. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Fake safety.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether this is actually my thing, why I don't have certifications. Yeah. Because I find it suddenly very restrictive, as if it would give away myself permission to do my own thing. But then it's, I think, now reflecting. Welcome to the therapy session. Workshops work. Now reflecting on it, it could actually be the opposite.
Yes, 100%. Right. And it's all about your intention with the certification. If you're like, oh, I need this certification to feel good enough, which I see happening a lot, especially in the coaching space as well, right? There's so many people like, oh, I should get another certification and then I'll feel good enough. That, of course, is completely useless because you're not going to feel good enough. You could do
not because 30. Of the certification.
Yeah. That's not how this works. Yeah.
Yeah. And then rather seeking the certifications because out of curiosity.
Yes.
Like adding another cuisine to our cooking skills.
And sometimes just for fun, right? Like for me, I was working as a professional speaker, and for me, learning moderation was just super fun and juicy to just go and do that training. I knew the trainers were going to be incredible, right? So that's another reason to work with outstanding people. Great reason.
Absolutely. And meeting other participants. Yes. So there's this self-selection process of if you're going to certain trainings or events, it is basically a pre-selection of people you're about to meet.
Yes, 100%.
Independent of the content.
Yep. Yep. So certifications can be a way to have fun in the world.
Yeah. And in our exploration call, we spoke a lot about wonder. And I think how we got there was through the photography class.
Yes.
Because you want to help people to show their perspective.
Yeah. I want to do many things, right? So for me, wonder, Asterix and Obelix? Mm-hmm. I think it was Obelix who fell into or was it Asterix? I keep forgetting. No,
Obelix.
Okay, he fell into the liquid, right? So I fell into the wonder liquid. Mm-hmm. I don't know how this happened. But since I was very young, I've always been walking around like, oh my God, I can't believe this. This is incredible. Like whether it's a flower or a sunrise or, I don't know, a brick it doesn't matter what it is. I have this capacity for wonder. That's actually the reason I went to study philosophy, right? It's just like, oh, there's this official wonder course. Let's see what it's like. It was a bit disappointing in that aspect, I have to say. I may need to rethink that, but that's a different discussion. Academia is a whole, we can talk about that some other time. But yeah, for me, like wonder has always been present in my life. And I had a very hard time sharing it with other people, as in, it's almost like you're in your own bubble and you're looking at the other people and you're like, but can't you see like this? This is incredible. Why aren't you tripping on this thing like I am? Right. And I thought philosophy would be a way to learn to share that wonder. Now, writing philosophical essays isn't the best way to, or the most effective way to share wonder with people. So when I discovered
another form of wonder, maybe.
Yeah, it's exactly right. So when I discovered photography, and especially smartphone photography, I was like, oh my God. And then social media came and I could share images of my wanderings, right? And that became for me the way to, first of all, connect with other people and sort of make them see my world and then invite them in, right? And help them share what their world looks like.
Can we teach people to wander? Because I'm just imagining this situation where you are in awe with every detail that you see around you and your mom dragging you behind. Can't
yes,
you
or my husband, right, on biking holiday. And I'm like, but look at this flower. And he'd be like, oh.
Yes, but we are now already late.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
So that's the mental image I have when I
100% correct.
And then yet there's so much to share, but it requires time, as you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, to explore the wonder and then to share it. And it requires an open mind. I must be curious about your wonders and understand, what do you see that I don't?
Yeah.
What do you spy with your tiny eyes?
So I have to sell it to you, right? You have to make an investment to see this, but also and I think that is my superpower. I can make things really easy and accessible to other people. So instead of saying, oh, come with me and, join my trip. I mean, it's fun, but sure, it's not for everyone. How can I take one tiny thing that if you apply yourself for 3 minutes a day, you will add this magic to your world? So that is what I did. Right. And I think that's where the maths come in and the sort of structural thinking and the systems. How can I make this work in a way that people can consume it quite easily and it still changes their lives?
Sounds like facilitation.
Doesn't it just?
Easy?
Yes, 100%.
So what is the 3 minutes per day trick to start to wonder?
It's very simple. I designed this course called Anders Kijken, like, Anders Sehen in German, looking at the world with fresh eyes. People would just get an email every day for, I think, 6 days. And I think I started this in like 10 years ago now, right? And the first day would be look up and take a picture of what you see. Very simple, right? And already this was mind blowing to people because they'd never seen the ceiling of their office, for example. Oh my God. Yeah. And then I always had a bonus exercise for people who want to work harder. And that would be like, go stand in a copse, right? Be surrounded by trees and look up as a bonus exercise, find a copse. So every day for 5 days, it would be one very specific thing. I think one of them was play with shadows and so on and so forth. And I think already after 3 days, people were addicted. They're like, oh my God, this is like, because of course the brain is a search engine. It loves when you give it direction. It's like, the car game when you're in the car and you're like, oh, we're going to look for, blue cars. Your brain loves that shit. So that's what I also used, of course, right? Find things. My sort of evergreen warm-up exercise is find circles when I'm doing a photography workshop. And people will be seeing circles for the rest of the week. It's like incurable. So that is what I did. And then at the end of the 5 days, I had a little surprise. I thought I'd take it a little deeper. And I said to them, okay, listen, if you've enjoyed this and you want to graduate, here's a bonus exercise. Take a picture of something you fear, right? And face your fear And that is your certification for this course because you faced your fears.
Literally.
Super simple. And thousands of people took the course and they were sharing it with other people. They were sharing their pictures. And I loved what I hadn't sort of anticipated was the incredible connection, right? So if people went through the course together and they shared their picture of the day, they were sharing how they saw the world on that day. And that was just mind-blowing.
And did you, the final exercise, face your fear and take a picture. I think it's genius. And it might be a very nice artwork, actually, a coffee table book with all these fears 100%. And maybe a short story behind it.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine that you have all different sorts of things, from a swimming pool to maybe even a person.
Yeah, to a music teacher, maybe, right? Or a spider, or et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So I did actually create a conceptual artwork with this, not a coffee table book, but I started doing challenges before challenges were a thing. And I called it Synchronize, right? Looking at one thing with thousands of people online every day, a new assignment. And then everybody shared their pictures. And I had volunteers, because it was a lot of work, who pinned all the pictures to Pinterest boards. So you were looking at the world through thousands of eyes. And it was such a beautiful way also to play with language, right? For example, one day we had the word button, and there are many ways like buttons show up in the world. And then you see this spread of like buttons from, all over the world, people, using buttons to press, buttons on their clothes, so many things. And it was just the best thing ever. It was completely mind-blowing. Yeah.
Beautiful. And to come back to the course, so it is a vulnerable space. People share something very personal. Was there a part where you would discuss the photography, where you would debrief, or was it purely?
Not in this one. So, right, this was a free, very simple, people could share it in a Facebook group. But in the workshops and the online trainings I did, where we had like the people knew each other, then of course we would debrief and discuss what people were seeing and noticing. And I mean, I think the most beautiful thing with photography is what you see in someone else's work, right? That can just be such a gift to them, because I think we take a lot of pictures also very intuitively, and we don't actually see the amazing things we're doing sometimes, right? And then someone else will say, oh, but I love how you positioned this there, or I love how you picked up on that thing. And you'll be like, oh, I didn't like consciously pick up on this, but somehow I did.
Sorry, I just need to write down something, because you triggered an idea and I will come back to it. And what I think works because of the feedback, so it reminds me of the follow-up question when we're in a conversation with someone. It's to share a story is one thing, to share a picture. To have someone listen and say, oh, that's nice, is another thing. Asking a follow-up question really helps you to break the ice and to build this bond. And I can imagine that with a picture, looking at it and then commenting or seeing something, so adding your own perspective to it is like this follow-up question.
Yes.
Where
and
you
it's saying, I see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that it's and I might underestimate it. Let me ask you instead of assuming. Are you doing anything at the beginning of the workshops to break the ice or to bring the community together?
Yes, to create safety.
Yeah.
100%. Massively important. I think that's why, because for a long time, I was the only person doing this and in that space. And I was like, where are the other people? And then I realized how much extra stuff I was doing to create that safe space where people were willing to share, and even like sharing very personal stories, because I also did a selfie workshop at some stage when selfie became word of the year. I think it was 2015. And I've always been fascinated by self-portraits in art and the way we like to tell stories of how rich and amazing we are in the 17th century, right? The Dutch merchants, all that kind of stuff. And then how selfies came. And basically, it was fascinating to see people playing with their self-image and sharing it online. So I decided to do a challenge on that. And that was actually a big group. I think there were 700 people in there, but it became very intimate online, right? A Facebook group. People started sharing pictures of themselves and sharing things like, this is the first time since my divorce I've looked at myself and liked myself. Right? Yeah. It was beautiful. It was incredible. And again, very simple exercises. So the first exercise, of course, I like to kick it off easy. All facilitators will recognize this, was to take a self-knee, right? A no selfie, where you take a picture of yourself and you can't see your face. You can see a part of your head, right? And maybe the ceiling or one ear, that kind of thing. And then playing with the space around it. And then, of course, people have their easy introduction into the space with a tiny part of their body, which isn't their identity. And then it becomes so much easier.
Why is that?
Because we're terrified of other people judging us.
And our appearance.
Yeah. And of course, we're judging us already.
Yeah, I think we're the only ones judging ourselves.
Well, maybe
Nobody
not
else
always.
really cares.
Right? Sometimes there are mothers who have opinions and friends.
Yes.
Well-meaning, well-meaning people. But yeah, it's all in our head. And just taking that kind of away from you, be saying, okay, this is not about you judging the way you look. It's about playing with this thing, this body you inhabit and the space around it. And, all that kind of stuff creates a space to be curious again, right? The wonder, the curiosity, and not the judgment.
And I think this is then a huge gift that you can give to participants to wonder about themselves.
Yes. 100%.
In a positive, curious, open-minded way.
Yeah. So it became an exploration.
It sounds almost like a self-healing journey more than a photography class.
So everything I do is not actually a photography class, right?
Okay. Good that we talked about it.
And I always used to say that to people. So I was like, listen, if you want to learn the technical aspects of photography, there is a guy in a t-shirt on YouTube who will explain the one thing you want to know, like about aperture or whatever. Of course, I will cover it so you get to take better pictures, but we're not here for the technique. That would be super boring for me too. That's not what I'm about. It's a tool. It's a tool for transformation. And another thing I did, which was also super fun, because I'm all about playfulness, as you may have guessed by now. During the selfie course, one of the days was my birthday. It just happened to be in that week. And I said, okay, today's assignment is I want you to go skipping and then take a picture of you, like to celebrate my birthday. So hundreds of people were skipping. And skipping, like one technique I used to use when I was a portrait photographer, a professional photographer, I would make people jump. If they were super tense, I'd make them jump up and down because it releases like the facial muscles. And, it's great for your circulation. You look so much better. So at the end of the day, I had these insane pictures of all these glowing, happy people because they'd just gone skipping. And they felt so good. Right? So yeah, super fun.
And I feel so inspired because what I hear is that we can find small tweaks to get people into a better mental state or to do things to get out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And what I hear is it's easier if it's related to something that sounds to them as if there's a good reason for doing that.
Yes. Yes.
So they have permission to skip. So either they skip for you.
Exactly. Right. So if I would just have said, oh, go skipping, maybe
because it's good for your time.
Maybe 10% would have done it. But to add this extra kind of fun celebratory thing.
And again, it's funny how this works because it sounds very courageous from your side to ask 100 people to, for my birthday.
Oh, listen, no,
skipping.
It may look courageous. It doesn't feel that way at all. I am shameless when it comes to that, right? Like, no, listen. That's just how my brain works. I'm like, oh, this would be fun. Let's do it, right? Yeah. That's just how I like it. That doesn't mean I don't have fears. Of course, I'm human. I have all that. But when it comes to creative work, playing with people, I'm not so much afraid of asking people to do a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you define play?
Oh my God.
Sorry.
How do I define play? I mean, I think I would define it like retroactively, like I know it when I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would kind of reason backwards. So, okay, this feels like play. Now, what are the ingredients? Probably being in flow, feeling a kind of lightness instead of pressure and openness. Again, the non-judgment.
Mm.
And I think play to me is also about making something, whether it can be ephemeral, right? It doesn't need to be a specific thing, but it is about creation as well. Yeah.
I think, and in the context where there's suddenly different rules applying than what we would usually.
Yeah, but I have to say, like, because I have been, a solopreneur for so many years, I've been without rules for so long. I'm not really in a context where rules apply, right? I always get to set my own rules.
And do you set your own restrictions as well?
Yes, of course. Otherwise, I'd go mad. 100%. Yeah.
How do you set your own restrictions?
I think time is a great constraint for me, of course, right? There are so many things I'm interested in. Space is another constraint. Like I'll do certain things in certain spaces. I have dedicated desks for different activities, even. I have a painting desk or a painting table. I have a Lego table. I have a thinking table. I have this is my iMac interact with the world table. So there's lots of ways in which I can, get my own constraints.
It's beautiful because you're basically priming yourself to get in a specific mood.
Yes. And this is going back to like you asking me, how did you know about all this? I don't, I just feel it. So I've been doing this for years. And then I read this book about it, that this is a thing. Oh yeah, makes sense. Right. Yeah. But it just feels better this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether these are actually the things. It's fantastic that someone wrote a book about it because it works for them. But I think it only clicks if you find it out for yourself.
I don't know. I'm honestly curious about that because I do find everything out for myself, but some people don't. And I mean, I hope those books help them. So I think some people, there's lots of different kinds of people. I don't often need permission. Right?
Lucky you.
I know. But a lot of people need permission. So sometimes whether that's another person going first, or if it's in a book and there's scientific research that proves that it's a great idea to get up and draw on like a big sheet of paper on the wall, right? That will give them permission to do it. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. And I think something we have to be mindful of when we're working with groups.
Yes.
I think the majority needs permission
100%.
and ask and wait, especially in groups that come together and they're new to each other.
Yeah.
Or you're breaking the rules.
Even to start moving, right? Like that's another thing I really had to learn as a facilitator. And I always used time constraints like exercise, right? As warm-up exercises. So for example, if it was autumn, I'd have like a bag of tatsumas. And I would say, okay, you have 3 minutes with this tatsuma. Go around this. I have like this massive workshop space. Go around this space and take as many different kind of pictures with this one tatsuma as you can.
What is the tatsuma?
A tatsuma, a mandarin, like a tiny orange. And then, of course, they would sit there and kind of be like, I was like, okay, get up now, right? Time starts now. And then they will get up and sort of start to scramble. But you have to give them that extra nudge and extra permission. And then, of course, after that, their reward was they got to eat the tatsumas. Or it was a shared space of consuming and sort of another sort of lull in the energy, recovery time, sharing the pictures, because that's a massive component of my workshops, right? Like, oh my God, you saw this in this space. I am in the same space. My mind is blown, right? My perspective is opened even further. Yeah.
And what I hear is the design almost related to energy.
Yes, 100%. Again, completely intuitively, right? And I think we spoke about this before. This is where my martial arts training comes in. I am extremely sensitive to energy flow. And I can even project ahead of time, okay, now the group is going to need this. And I may need to adjust a little bit in the moment, right, in reality. But I know if they've done a very intense sort of time constrained running around exercise, then first of all, I need to gather them all back, right? Because they're all over the place, and we need to like focus back inwards, and they need to recover a little bit. And then I can start revving them up a bit for the next exercise. Maybe that's a great moment to do some teaching as well, show them some smartphone tricks, and then off we go again.
Yeah. So it's something that now comes natural to you to have these moments of, and I think in more verbal workshops, we would have the kind of the divergent thinking, opening up, being creative, being crazy. It's bursting energy, and then convergent thinking, bring it back home, reflecting, sharing.
It's ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What makes a workshop fail?
I think if you don't connect with the people in the workshop and they don't connect with each other, I think that would be the biggest failure. If everybody stays in their own, disconnected world, because that makes change very hard.
And yes, of course. And then there's no space for wonder.
Yeah.
And there's no space for seeing the other person's perspective.
Yeah. And I think I have to say it is very hard for a workshop to fail completely, because there's just the fact that all these different energies come together changes something, right? I don't think a workshop can ever be a complete failure. It can be a disappointment maybe for people that maybe they were expecting more, or et cetera, but something is bound to happen.
Yes. If you can really create the container and direct the energy, thinking of Aikido.
Yes, 100%.
And I'm somehow thinking of an interview I had with Tom Goldhand, who is a dance facilitator. So he's a dance teacher, mostly improvisation dance. And we're speaking about all the energies that come to a dance class, or to the extreme who come to ecstatic dance, and how the facilitator has actually to create a space to level all these different energies.
Yes.
And I can imagine that for your sessions, it's quite similar.
Yes, 100%. Well, I love this this is a perfect metaphor, because that's exactly how it is. I'll have someone come in who's like super excited, but usually also like there'll be one or two people in the workshop who know a shit ton about photography, may even be professional photographers who come to me to learn to play again, right? So they come with a very different energy to someone who's like, oh, I don't really know how my smartphone works. I'm a bit insecure. Am I even creative? Really closed, passive kind of. And then there's just people who come to be sociable and interact with everybody. So there's so much going on, right? And then of course there's, okay, I have to show other people my work. Like, how does that feel? Do I want to withdraw? How do I react to other people? People's pictures. There's a people pleasing, all these energies going on, and you have to manage them all, right? And then maybe throughout someone will get they'll start on a high, or they'll be very dominant, and then they'll notice, oh, I can't dominate here with my knowledge, for example, of photography, which is what I always use to feel safe. And something else is required of me. And then I have to do some extra work to kind of, maybe prop them up even a little bit. So I will tell maybe someone else who's struggling, oh, talk to this person because they can help you with this one thing. So they get this extra confidence boost, which then helps them be more courageous in where they need to grow.
Thank you. There's so much to unpack. And before that, I just want to underline what you just explained with a person who comes into a photography workshop as the expert, and that's their comfort zone. And I think those in the audience who work with groups in how shall we call them, verbal workshops, it's always the know-it-all.
Exactly.
The expert.
Yes.
And the big question is how to deal with them.
Yeah.
And then what I hear in what you say is that you don't create the stage where they can actually show off with what they know, but then you make them some sort of a mentor, or you give them the special task to feel good about themselves, to share their knowledge, but never
on a stage, right? Never on the stage, because that would reinforce the behavior that isn't, in my opinion, serving them in this container.
Yeah.
So in a small aside moment, they can shine, right? And they're not just shining, they're actually helping the other person and helping me.
Yeah.
Right. So I am really grateful because I don't need to explain this thing. I can go on managing the energy instead of saying, oh, you need to press this button.
Yeah. Is there something that you do for grounding or to sense the energy, or is it something that emerges naturally? And
I just feel it, right? I don't have like a ritual or anything. I just know. It's just this complete knowing. I don't even think about it consciously. It's now that we're unpacking it, I'm even realizing what I'm doing. Yeah.
It sounds as if your workshops are rather large.
Actually, the live workshops are very small, right? So they'll be like, the most I've done is like, I think 18 people.
Okay.
Yeah. And the online ones are massive. That's a whole different way of working with people and working with energy.
And these are asynchronous or they're live sessions?
They can be both. They can be, live. And I've also worked on stages with people, right? Like as a speaker and then made them do things. And that's a whole other dynamic. When you have 1,000 people in the room and you have to want to make them play with you.
Ooh. So what's the magic trick?
Depends on context.
Nobody's listening, so you can share with me.
It depends on context. But for example, for Honeywell, they had a massive 1,000 people event with engineers from all over the world. And the idea was that I was going to help them take selfies, which of course, for many of them was like insane.
So why would I need to take selfies?
This is ridiculous. This is stupid. And of course, there was a whole reason and context behind it and a kind of marketing campaign, like internal communication. So I said, okay, what's happening? CEO speaking first. I said, okay, I'm going to teach the CEO how to take a selfie on the stage. He goes first. And then the rest will be okay.
Did you brief the CEO beforehand?
There was a rehearsal, right? Because we needed to live stream it. And it was a long time ago. And that stuff was a lot harder than it is today. Yeah.
So what is it that we can learn from taking selfies? Because it comes back a couple of times. And I wonder whether taking selfies is something that we can also use in other workshops.
Oh my God, yes. And also actually partnering and taking pictures of each other. Right? I use that a lot too for people who are like, uneasy around each other. It can even be an icebreaker actually in the beginning of the workshop. But then you have to make sure that people know how to make someone look reasonably good. So there's a little bit of technique involved as well, because nobody wants to, of their picture, they can look like this. Basically, people not watching the video, I just made an ugly face. Yeah, like selfies, basically, our brain is constantly, I think, measuring, do I stack up? Does the tribe still like me? Right? Or am I going to be chucked out? And will I die?
Yeah.
Very basic. So for many of us, that shows up in our appearance, like our external appearance. And of course, that this is amplified by culture, social media, etc., in the most horrendous ways. Let's not go there. You can talk about that for hours too. I don't think it's useful. And we want to counteract that. And I think selfies used well can be an amazing way of letting people play with their appearance, but also showing them that there are 1,000 ways you can look, right? You can even just playing with perspective. So that's always when I do a workshop. I mean, I think I will always do that. I'll say, okay, everybody, whether they're paired or whether you're doing it on your own, take a picture of yourself from below. And they're like, oh my God, I look so ugly. I have a double chin. I hate this. But some of the men may be like, this is not too bad. I look like this real strong person. And then I'll give it another bonus exercise and say, I want you to start thinking about newspaper pictures and media pictures and how powerful men are portrayed. Usually their eye level is a little bit above the camera, right? Women love to be portrayed like looking up because it makes them younger and slimmer. But that means they're always not in a dominant position, but in a submissive position. And that becomes our visual language.
Wow, yes.
So we play with that.
So I can imagine if this is what we then also learn, how to take pictures, how to present ourselves. So what does it mean about us presenting each other and ourselves in the context of an organization?
Exactly.
And speaking of women empowerment.
Exactly.
So how to break through the patriarchy if we present ourselves always like the submissive princesses.
Yes, I will definitely talk about that. in every workshop, right? How can we take the power back if we're like Bambi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And this is such a fun game, and anybody can play with this in their workshops, right? Like, because it's about power. It's about positioning yourself above or below or at eye level and just experiencing that difference, like physically, and taking a picture and then looking at the pictures and seeing the impact in itself can be mind blowing.
And how would you debrief that? Because I think especially if someone else is taking a picture of me, so there's this moment of vulnerability, shyness. Yes. So there's, I think for sure, a giggly moment involved.
Yeah. So I give them a lot of instruction on how to talk to your model, right? So I will say, listen, your main job as a photographer is to put your model at ease and to stay connected. So this is also an exercise in connection, right? And I will like do a very exaggerated example of me having my smartphone and being like this, okay, are you sharp? Right? I'm like, this is not how this works. You cannot hide behind your camera. You need to be with the person in front of you, right? And keep that connection and check in with them. How are they feeling? And keep talking to them. And at the same time, you have to like find a way to take a great picture. That's hard, right? Yeah. It's so much easier to say, hey, you go stand there, look nice. And I will fiddle with my controls and take a picture. Yeah. Be with the person.
And yeah, there's so much to learn about facilitation in general, right? Or how do you put someone in ease if both of you, especially, are nervous?
There's a lot of ways. First of all, you say, hey, right? If people are really terrified, you're like, this picture, first of all, I'm going to take a lot of pictures. If you don't like them, I will delete them. That can be the contract, right? Safety. There's like ground rules. Second, again, maybe jumping, wiggling, dancing, telling stories, asking questions, all that kind of stuff, putting them at ease as well. And what I also love to do is, and I say, listen, you can be connected and take a picture of someone. The idea that they need to look into the lens, that is not necessary, right? So some people have a very hard time looking in the lens. It's actually probably 99% of people. So why don't you let them look outside and ask them, like, how are you feeling right now? Do you feel a little melancholy? Do you feel excited? What does that look like, right? Am I feeling like a visionary? You can see immediately my entire posture changes. Yeah. Am I a little sad, right? And then you can play with the moods, and people don't need to like fake happiness. Yeah. Do stuff like that. It's not necessary for people to smile either. Let go of all that. Yeah. And a third thing, and this is also what I think is interesting for facilitators, it's so much easier if someone gets to hold something. Right? If people are posing, I think the only people who can actually pose without any support are actors, because they really know how to be in a space with their body. All us other humans, we cannot. We need at least a wall or, right, something, because we don't know how to be in a vacuum with our body. So if you give them something to lean against, that will make a massive difference. But I'm just making this up right now, actually, but I think it would be a really fun exercise to have like a table full of objects, and then they get to pick an object. And then, of course, there's a story why they picked that object. Yeah. They can hold it while taking the picture. And then you can ask them, why did you pick that specific thing?
Yeah. And while doing that, just connecting with your own emotions, thinking, how will I look with this? What's the facial expression or the body language that goes with this emotion?
What constructs am I trying to come up with and portray, and why?
Yeah.
I mean, this could be an entire workshop in itself, right?
Yeah. Where suddenly the taking pictures is basically, air quotes, an excuse.
Yeah.
To really connecting and seeing.
It's a tool.
The person. It's because this is very vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's very deep work. And I think for a lot of people, especially again, women, have this conviction that they look horrible in pictures. right, that other people take. So they will be playing with taking their own selfies and maybe filters, but they're like, no, but I look horrible if other people take pictures of me. And just kind of slowly unwrapping that and like, no, it's got nothing to do, first of all, whether you're beautiful or not has got nothing to do with this. That's not even a question. So completely reframing the whole idea of appearance and what it means and what it can look like if you stop trying to control it.
Yeah, and different perspectives on aesthetics. So
Yes.
what is beauty in the first place?
Yes. There's the philosophy again.
Yes.
And that's also what I love to do, right? Because people have so many preconceived ideas about beauty and about how they should be portrayed. And yeah, that's also when we get to play and try lots of weird, different things and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, breaking rules.
Yes.
And now I understand better what you meant by my photography classes are basically not photography classes. Yeah. How do you prepare the participants for what's coming? How do they know?
I just lure them into my evil lair. They've got no idea. No, seriously. I think if they knew beforehand what they were in for, they wouldn't come, or it'd be much harder. So I don't sell it this way. I don't sell it as a deep transformational experience.
Yeah, people would also consider you a bit woo-woo.
Yeah. So basically, I just say you're going to have a lot of fun and learn to take amazing pictures with your smartphone with other fun people.
That's getting interesting. And what is the moment where they realize that they basically walked into the trap? and so, because I think there are several moments. There's one moment where like, uh-oh, I have to do stuff that might feel very uncomfortable. So fear, how can I run away maybe? And then the next moment of, oh, this is actually nice.
Yeah. I think this is where I design all the exercises, especially in the beginning, to be super light, fast-paced, fun, playful. So they get this joy energy that then compensates with the fear.
And some quick wins.
Yes.
Okay, I'm learning something. I'm progressing.
Yeah. And in that sense, I have a very easy job compared to other facilitators because they have this thing, right, that they have with them all the time that they're not really using in a proper way. And I mean, even after like 10 minutes, I've taught them some stuff that they're like, I can now take amazing pictures with my smartphone. Oh my God. So they're already so happy that then we can do whatever feels good.
That's a very nice trick for facilitation in general. And I think, yes, it's more difficult if we don't have a third object.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Which can be a Lego brick, a phone, or something.
Yes.
Yeah. What remains your number one facilitation challenge?
I think for me, sometimes also letting go of the fun part. Not everything needs to be fun and light, right? To be totally okay when things get difficult with people, as long as I support them in the right way, because that is where more growth is.
And then without
pleasing, right? I would say, yeah.
So away from the people pleasing and the savior role?
Not even savior, just making them happy and have fun, right? Like, just not everything needs to be fun, even though it's a lot of fun to have fun. Yeah.
Yeah. And I hear judgment in that, because if we require everything to be fun, then we're basically judging the emotions that are not fun.
Exactly.
And then we're not holding space for that.
Yes. Yeah. And of course, it also depends on the context, right? If someone pays money for a fun smartphone photography workshop, if that is the setting, I am not going to go that deep. Depending on the group, sometimes if I have a very special group, then I will. But those are not the people I will take to a very deep level naturally. But there are different constellations, or if it's a specific team and so on and so forth, then you want to go deeper and you want it to get a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah. Especially if it's then something that maybe goes on for a longer term. So it's not just one course, but a community.
Exactly. So I have a new coaching group right now, right? So with them, I will go a lot deeper. And after, of course, again, creating the safety.
Yeah. Do you use photography in your coaching group?
Not yet, but that is due to happen. So that is on my calendar for this year. Again, this is how I use constraint, right? So I moved away from photography 2 years ago to become an incredible coach. And this year is about synthesizing.
Writing. Oh, what made you make this clear cut?
I think I know how hard it is to be spread very thin. And I have, like you and probably everyone listening, a gazillion interests. Right? I mean, I'm learning Japanese. I'm still painting. I'm doing so many things. And I know that if you want to become amazing at something, it is so much easier if you focus on it as much as you can. So for me to keep the photography going and dive into this new thing didn't feel great. Like, no. And I also know, I mean, from years of experience, that the best thing ever, everything you've done contributes to the next thing you do. Right? It's not like, because people were like, you have this amazing thing going. How can you kill this? I'm like, that is not what's happening at all. I'm just saying, hey, can't hire me right now as for workshops, no courses, nothing happening, full-time coach. And then I know 100% that this is going to come back. I will find a way to integrate it beautifully and innovate, right? Because that is what the joy is for me, to come up with new things in different fields.
Yeah, otherwise it becomes also boring.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. Although working with humans is rarely boring.
Never boring. Oh my God.
It's never the same. No. And you're also hosting a community.
Yeah.
So how do you, and that's an online community, I assume.
Yeah. Right now, these are small cohorts of people working together. I think I have 16 in the first cohort who work on a big thing for a year together with me.
So each comes with their own challenge.
Yes. They're all completely different. It's so fun. And another reason I love it is because people think, oh, a big thing. Are they writing a book, or are they, building a new product? Some of them are. Some of them want to learn something very personal or change something in their personal life. Like one person wants to become amazing at meditation and create the space and learn to meditate for 30 minutes consecutively by the end of the year, and spend 30 minutes every day in ID flow, right? So a big thing, a one thing, can be very constrained and very personal. It doesn't need to be like an external big thing.
Which brings us back to the beginning, Anders Kaike, looking differently at something. So what is a big thing for one person can be a very small for another one.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much freedom once people start seeing that. I think so many people push themselves to do quote unquote big things that they really don't want to do. Right. And they do feel a nudge, or they have a desire for something, but they think that doesn't count because you can't post about it on LinkedIn or whatever. And actually, that can be the one thing that makes a massive difference in their lives and then has a ripple effect, right, on all of us.
Yeah, true. Very often, if we have a personal breakthrough, it does impact our professional lives.
Yes, always. Right. So it's such a joy to work with these people and to, of course, design a beautiful experience for them, to surprise them with stuff as well. I have a sort of visual safari for them in mind, because that's another thing. During lockdown, of course, I had to completely remake my photography workshops so people could do them online. So I designed them so people could do them in their own house, had them running around, find objects, take pictures, again, share them. So that's a new thing I'm designing for this group, and that'll then be rolling out. So this is also kind of my lab.
Beautiful.
Oh.
Yeah. And how do you create this kind of, not create, but how do you maintain this connection, especially over a longer period of time? And for the larger groups, for 16, if they meet regularly, synchronously, I think that's quite intuitive because you go deeper.
Yeah.
But the large groups, how do you keep them in connection?
I think when you run larger groups, it's very hard to do it for a year, right? I think that's almost an impossible ambition. It's possible if you are the kind of person who loves to keep creating content and keep it fresh, and you are constantly evolving and your audience kind of evolves with you. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, I would aim for like short bursts. And then, people will come back, or they'll be reminded of you. But there's so many things grabbing people's attention that if you want to keep them sort of locked in for a year, you have to be amazing at showing, and you have to enjoy it, right? Like I enjoy doing video. Like I'm happy because I love to talk and I love to like evangelize and I have opinions and I love to share them, right? So for me, this is relatively easy. But for people who are like, I want to spend time 3 weeks away to build a beautiful thing, which I then share with the world, that's a very different dynamic. And then to have a very large container stay interested in you. No, during those 3 weeks, they'll be off doing something else. So you have to kind of yank them back with maybe a challenge or a big reveal or something like that.
Yeah. Or share the task and have the community do
it along with you.
Yeah.
Right. Sharing the process is always gold.
That's what I realized with the Never Done Before community. In the beginning, I felt that it was my responsibility to curate, to entertain, to show up, and to do all of that myself. Mainly, I think, because I didn't know it better, and also of quality assurance. These people joined because they expect a certain quality, and then it's suddenly my responsibility to maintain that. Until I realized that it's so much more fun to just open it up and to give back the responsibility and say, okay, you do, you create, you suggest and do.
I love that. And also trusting you to attract like high quality people.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I find fascinating about communities in general, that there's usually one thing that and that's very often the founder. They attract a certain type of people who then are more likely to actually also click with each other.
Yeah, like each other, 100%.
And then it becomes also easier, I think, to facilitate these communities. Although then it's important to add some spice, because if everyone is just alike.
Exactly. Right. Then it becomes
different constraints and different plays, maybe.
And that's why it's so fun to but you know this, to invite guests on with a very different perspective from yours to shake things up a bit.
Yes. Maybe I'm not doing this enough. It's actually a good one, which is maybe difficult in this space, in the facilitation and coaching space, to really have those who have very different opinions.
Maybe they don't need to be diametrically opposed, or they still need to be value aligned. I think that's the most important thing, right? Because you have core values and people in your container will share those, right? That's why they're there. And that's also what creates the safety. So someone who comes and breaks down all those values is I don't think that's useful. But someone with a very different way of doing things, same basic values, could work beautifully.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and the value, breaking the values means breaking the trust and the safety.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Now I do want to, my brain's immediately, but let's do that. What would that be like though? And how could you do that? Is there any way because I always want to question everything, right? Even though I know that is I like my values. Why would I let go of them? But maybe even just to draw values, like you have just this box of values, you draw 5 and you have to live a day like that.
Ooh.
How fun would that be?
Yeah, different perspective. Or to swap values. What if you find a partner and you swap values for a day?
Love it.
And take pictures of how this shows up.
Exactly. Yeah. And even do a video, I could, one of my values is you don't throw trash on the floor, you keep things tidy, or you basically clean up your own trash. So if someone else drops something, I will put it in the bin, right? So to walk around and then maybe intentionally drop something, it already feels painful. Or if someone else drops something, just do nothing.
Yeah.
What is that like? And what does that also, what comes up for me when I try to live that way?
And also, what do the same values mean to different people?
Yeah.
Because I think your value of tidiness or responsibility for shared space might show up totally different for someone else.
Yes, 100%.
And then again, to debrief what this actually means and what we can learn from other perspective.
And I think in that sense, I mean, photography is like an amazing tool. I've worked a lot with local government teams, helping them look in a new way at the neighborhoods they have to take care of, for example. Right. So another great exercise you can do, and even like with people from Unilever, like who had to think about shopping and stuff, like take on a persona and take pictures through that persona. So then we go deeper than values, but it's actually very simple. Like if you go into a supermarket and you start taking pictures, imagining you're an 80-year-old, right? What do you notice? Like, oh, you can't even reach like the bottom shelf, or it's very hard to navigate things or find what you want. That type of game can be so useful and so fun.
Yeah. Reminds me of design thinking. Actually.
Yes. 100%.
Right?
Yep.
Really take on the persona as well.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking of the perspective again. So how the heights or how we look at things in general.
Exactly.
Also proximity.
Yes. Proximity, 100%. Like what feels, good, what doesn't. And then gathering all this, like when people have taken the picture, then I usually have them present back to the group, showing the pictures, showing their perspective, and telling the story of how it felt for them. Right. And then basically you see, it's almost like cubism in the sense that you unfold all these different perspectives of being in a space, for example, or of doing an activity, and you start seeing it through this lens, and it's all completely different, and it opens up your mind in an amazing way.
Yeah, you can see that. Wow. I'm very curious because I'll go and host an in-person retreat, workshop, training soon. I haven't done that for a long time. And I came up with an idea of a variation of the child's game, I Spy with My Tiny Eyes. Ich sehe was du nicht siehst.
Yes.
But then asking them to pair up between those who have a long seniority in the organization and those who just joined, and then share with each other, I spy with my tiny eyes, something in the organization.
I love it.
Something in the team, and then something in myself.
Beautiful.
And I wondered whether actually it could even be a prep task to ask them to take pictures of what they spy with their tiny eyes. And I think it can be even more powerful.
100%.
To do that.
Because you're already priming them, first of all, right? To start looking through that lens. And then you have the tangible to work with.
Yeah. I only wonder to what extent then the phone could be a distraction. And no, it can actually also be an anchor because it's comfort zone. They can hold on to something that they know so well.
And you can always tell them to put it down.
Yeah, or to put it in airplane mode.
Yep.
Yes. Thank you. You've spoken for over an hour. Is there anything that you would have wanted to speak about?
I would love to speak about maybe a little bit more about the difference between coaching and facilitation.
Juicy one.
Yes. And I would actually love to hear how you see that first, if you want to.
Sure. For me, the main difference is that facilitation has a tangible outcome in general. So we're facilitating a process with a clear goal in mind. So we want to, even if we want to work better together, but it's something that's outside, whereas coaching focuses on something that's inside. So it's an internal transformation. And then we might very often use similar tools, but I think the coaching is much more personal. It's directed towards personal growth.
And not so much the group.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting, because I haven't trained that many or facilitated that many teams, right? So my groups haven't been so homogeneous. So for me, my experience is very different, for me, coaching isn't that different from facilitating because I was kind of managing the individual transformations during the facilitation.
And I think, group coaching is, again, different because you're coaching the individual. And then there's this additional unit, which is the group or the team.
Yeah. So when you're facilitating and you're working, let's say someone, is in a hotspot or whatever you want to call it, is it still different from coaching?
I think if the goal is to really dissect the inner journey and to bring the inward outward, then for me it's coaching.
Okay, so for you the difference is internal versus external.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that there's any official definition.
No, but I'm just curious. I love to explore this stuff.
Yeah. Because for instance, the Troika consulting is a liberating structure where colleagues are advising each other. And this it is a tool of peer coaching.
Yes.
And I think this would be at the center to really dissect and to understand how can we help each other and what's in the way. So how can I help my colleague to get out of their own way? What do we have to learn about our inner demons and inner children? Then it's really coaching work. If this is one part of, okay, now we have discussed strategy, let's use the Troika to see how we can actually implement it and help each other bring this to life. For me, it's very much facilitation.
Right. But that's more like the how-tos, the actionables, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. And I think facilitators, so this is just my opinion, are coaches in a way that they do work with the internal to facilitate, to make easier the external.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, I think if a facilitator is not aware of the coaching layers or skills, then it's very difficult to actually ensure the safe space for the individual.
Exactly. So I think all you facilitators, all great facilitators are great coaches. Maybe not consciously, but maybe from today.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you could just bunch people together in a group, tell them what to do. And we all know it's not that simple.
Yeah. And I think how you design the journey in general, right? What you described, you first need to create the safe space. You first need to get the energy up. If we don't understand how people might judge themselves, judge each other, be vulnerable, frightened, if we cannot listen beyond the words, and all these are coaching things.
100%.
Yeah. I recently, a colleague mentioned she was invited to a panel discussion live streamed. And the first question was, okay, share something about yourself that you haven't shared on social media or publicly yet. And she was like, I'm sorry, we're amongst facilitators. I won't. Why would I?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an icebreaker. Without knowing who is watching, let's create some safety first before asking me to be vulnerable. And I think that's a beautiful example of a facilitator not being aware of the people issues, not having the coaching skills.
Exactly. And not feeling how exposed people are, for example. Right. So, and that leads me to another question I would love to ask and brainstorm on with you, because I am, and I think most facilitators are, where they call themselves facilitators or not, we want to make the world a better place. So how can we claim more of our role and have more of an impact? Like, what are spaces, places, processes we could get more involved with to make things better for everyone? Right? Like I went to the hospital a couple of days ago for a very simple appointment. But when I'm there, of course, I'm like analyzing the experience. Like, how is this being facilitated? And there were so many ways in which it could have been so much better, for example. So I think there's a massive role for us there as well. Like of course, design thinking, but also like really, how do you facilitate experiences that, if you don't think about them properly, can actually be harmful almost and hurt people, and use our skills also in that arena?
I love that. So much to unpack. The first thing that came to my mind was, the activist spaces. And I recently did an interview with Anushka Ruge, and we spoke about facilitating activism and how difficult it is because everyone is so enthusiastic and emotionally involved in a topic to change the world for the better.
Yes.
That it's difficult to facilitate, and they do need a facilitator to actually hold the space, but the facilitators are very often also activists, so they actually want to participate and not only to facilitate. And then it becomes a catch-22.
Yeah.
Because usually also they don't have the budget to hire an external facilitator.
Yeah. Then it becomes a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this might actually be the biggest challenge of using our superpower of facilitation to change the world for the better, because the moment we are emotionally engaged, we somehow lose our facilitation hat along the way.
Yep. And it's hard. If you care so deeply, it's very hard. Yeah.
And then the other thought that came up was, yes, when you mentioned design thinking, that design thinking is a beautiful method to improve the experience at a hospital. And as you say, it doesn't mean that it's facilitated.
Yeah, exactly. So what is that extra bit, right? That is that gap that we can close as facilitators.
And you know what? I think it's an attitude. It's something that is intangible, that you cannot see and cannot measure, but you feel it when it's there.
When it's done right.
And I cannot explain it, but even if I step into a Zoom space, I can feel it, whether someone is holding the space and it's facilitated or whether it's just a bunch of people sitting behind the cameras.
Yeah. And it's just a messy, yeah. This, by the way, is also why I'm obsessed with 5-star hotels. Because they facilitate a seamless experience. Yeah. How do they do that if they do it well?
And what is there for hospitals to learn?
Exactly. Safety, seamlessness, being seen but not in an intrusive way.
Yeah. Seeing without controlling.
Yeah. I'm getting goosebumps now. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's also the role of a facilitator, to be there and witness and to be there if someone needs me without jumping on them and saying, do you need anything more?
Yeah. Let me tell you how to do this thing.
The difference of an experience in a very expensive boutique, yes, as opposed to a cheap clothes store is very similar. In the expensive boutiques, there would be rather, okay, I'm here if you need me. Yep. I can be there a lot if you need me a lot, but otherwise
I will vanish into the distance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's so many public spaces and public, schools, education, hospitals, all the places where we can have such bad experiences that there's so much left to change there. There's so much potential to make it so much better.
I was training university professors at the beginning of the pandemic on how to redesign their lectures in a way that would be engaging for the students. And it was fascinating to see how their mind just opened, that because they haven't even thought of the fact that if their students are joining on Zoom, the students cannot talk to each other unless they give them the opportunity to. So what makes the experience of studying is the moment we take a seat and we turn to our neighbor and we start a little conversation and we connect to them so that we feel safe and then focus on the content. And none of them meant it in a bad way. And I think there are millions of students who suffered through the pandemic because they went through 2 years of university without ever having talked to another student.
Yeah.
And the professors didn't mean bad. They just didn't know. So, and that's for me, this attitude.
Yeah. And seeing all the things that happen in the spaces that you're not even aware of that are actually
opening
massively
the eyes.
Important. Yeah.
Looking a little bit deeper and a little bit differently.
Yep. There we are. Beautiful.
Full circle.
Thank you. So good.
Beautiful. And for those who are watching the video, you have a roller coaster.
Yes. I have a Lego roller coaster in my background for many reasons. First of all, I love Lego and I've been working with it for so many years in my workshops and also in my course material even. And it's a great talking point. It's a great metaphor for coaching. Of course, it's never a straight line. It goes up, goes down. Sometimes you go super fast and you have this going up, tick, 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 and it feels kind of, is this going to work? And it's also slow and I hate it. Oh my God. what have I got myself into? So it's just perfect. And it's so much fun. It actually works. Like, right, the cards go around, so I can give them a spin. Not right now, because I think I need to fix the turning thing. But yeah, it's a source of joy for me and the people I work with as well.
Beautiful, and a beautiful metaphor.
And I'm going to build a new one because Lego came out with a new one with a proper loop and a big drop. So watch this space.
Awesome. I love how you're so enthusiastic about so many things.
Oh God, isn't it the best? Right? This is again me falling into the wonder pot. For sure. I'm a very blessed person.
And we in your company.
Hopefully it rubs off a lot.
Yes, I have a big smile on my face.
Good.
Thank you, Elsa.
You're so welcome. This was so good.
Thank you for staying tuned and for listening until the very end. I hope that you found the inspiration and the wisdom that you are looking for. And I hope that you will subscribe to the show so that you never miss any of the interviews with another inspiring facilitator from across the world. I'm devoted to continue this podcast and to deliver weekly an episode that maintains the quality that you expect and you deserve. And if you would like to help me to maintain this quality and to keep the podcast free, please help us. Visit workshops.work/support to make a small donation to keep the podcast free. Thank you so much. I hope to be in your ears next week.